And then he just looks at me and goes, if I had known, I wouldn't have talked to you. And I was like, what? And then a moment later he goes, but I might have a deal for you.
Shawn, thank you so much for coming on our New Closers podcast, where we explore the secrets of successful independent deal makers like yourself with Finalis. And I just wanted to kick off. I found a couple things. Actually, I found a lot of things in your background that were interesting. I won't get too deep into the MMA fighter documentary, although I'm very curious about that. But
You can ask away. That was fun. So yeah.
Okay, I will ask about that. And then I want to ask about the Silicon Valley podcast, because you run your own podcast as well, which is super interesting because bankers are not necessarily known for running podcasts, although maybe that's the new thing. We'll see. But let's start with the MMA fighter documentary. I'm like really curious about how that happened.
So as funny of a story as it is, so I was living in Beijing, China. I lived there for about 5 years. And when I was there, I wanted to do, everything with the local Chinese. So I went to a local Chinese gym, everything. I ended up going to a jujitsu gym there, and it was China top team. So it had the best Chinese fighters trained for the MMA. So Zhang Qichuan, Li Jinlan. But this is before any of them had fought in the UFC. And I'm training with these guys, and their stories are incredible. I mean, you have these people, this person had never went to high school. This person, couldn't read. This person, and this is China where the reading population is pretty much everyone. And they're all living in one room in a hotel across from the gym, 8 people in the room. And you're looking at it and you're thinking, why are these people doing this? They're always hurt, always injured. They keep going and they look at it as their opportunity. And so I want to record this and I want to make a documentary of it. So I followed them, interviewed them, asked them a bunch of questions. I even pitched it to a producer in Ireland when I was there after for a short amount of time. Never went anywhere, even though I did, submit the footage. I didn't know anything about how to produce documentaries of that. I just captured the content and then tried to pitch it. But it was incredible just hearing the stories of these people, most of them from Inner Mongolia that were there, and them growing up and wrestling and doing all these other things, and then thinking, okay, one day there could be this huge opportunity to fight in the USA at UFC. And, some of them since then, and this was at this point 13 years ago, some of them have made it. And I still have the footage. Maybe now it's valuable now that some of them have fought in the UFC. If they ever make a documentary on Chinese UFC fighters, please ping me. Please let me know. It was just an idea I had when I was there, and it didn't go anywhere. But at the same time, it was just incredible capturing the stories of some of these people that are now kind of heroes in the MMA fight community there in China and in Asia.
And it's interesting because, looking at your background and things like this, I can sort of see that you have this very broad-based curiosity about the world and life. And I wonder if that's how Silicon Valley podcast got its genesis. I'm kind of curious.
So I wish that was it. It was more out of laziness. So for a number of years, I was helping companies in Silicon Valley set up in tech parks in China, and Chinese companies set up in Silicon Valley. And with that, very similar conversations over and over and over again. A company comes to here, oh yeah, here's a lawyer to help with your IP. Here's an HR company. Here's a commercial real estate to get a lease on a office space, all the same conversations over and over. And I was doing Leadership Mountain View, and Leadership Mountain View, it's a group once a month you get together, learn about the city, and a lot of big companies will have a representative like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe. I had represented the company I was with at that time. And on one of the days they said, okay, we're going to go to the public access station. I was like, oh my gosh, you have a public access station? And I was thinking Wayne's World, party time. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so I can record stuff here? They're like, yeah, you just got to go through the training. It's easy. Get a small crew together. And there you go. I was like, oh my gosh, I could record all these service providers and that I make these intros to, create this reference library. And then anytime I bring over a company, I could just go look at episode 4, 8, and 12. And if you want to follow up, let me know because the interviews would cover that first meeting, 90% of the conversation. So I was thinking, okay, I'll interview all these people and then this will do my job for me and it'll be fantastic. And I ended up doing 46 interviews and it ended up on 28 public access stations in the US. One of them was LA 36 that has a couple million viewers of the public access station. And from that, I got connected with the Investors Podcast Network. They're a top financial podcast. I think they're at like 200 million downloads at this point. It's insane the number of downloads. And they wanted to do a podcast with Silicon Valley. And so we came to an agreement. I did a short podcast for them, about 6 months. And then the pandemic happened. And it was, well, nothing's happening, but I wanted to keep doing interviews. So it was, hey, I'd like to rebrand, start the Silicon Valley podcast and just keep going. And everyone was fine. The team there was fantastic. They're all great people. And I started the Silicon Valley podcast. So, I mean, if you notice, you could go to their website still, and it's got those first episodes. I interviewed Melody Perkins, founder of Canva, on their platform, and some other great people. And that was the genesis of the Silicon Valley podcast. And since then, I've interviewed founder of Square, Intel Capital, Juniper Networks. An episode that's going live shortly is I interviewed the person that introduced Steve Wozniak to Steve Jobs. And the interview was for Apple's 50th anniversary at the Computer
Wow.
Science Museum. So I've just been able to sit down with all these incredible people. Why? Because everyone wants to talk to a podcast host. No one wants to talk to an investment banker. So everyone out there, that's your secret. Actually, everyone wants to talk to an investment banker. Let's be honest. But
Wow.
more want to talk to a podcast host. So it's a great foot in the door. It's a great way to talk to high caliber people, the ones that you want to work deals with, and to be in a position where no one's guards up. It's casual. It's a conversation, and it's a great way to build a relationship.
And kind of create that space where you're not sort of pitching anything, you're just sort of learning and keeping things open.
Oh, it's totally a safe zone. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're cracking jokes, you're talking about everything other than a deal, right? And then it was kind of funny. There's one person I interviewed for the podcast. He'd taken a company public in Japan. He was working on a company here. It was one of the it was probably the first use of blockchain. I went, oh my gosh, this is blockchain used solving a real world problem. And after the interview, he invites me over. Hey, you should come over to my place. We'll get a bite to eat. We'll hang out. And a week later, I'm at his place. We're just hanging out. And he's like, how do you make a living as a podcast host? And I turned to him like, oh, I don't make any money through my podcast. It's just my passion project. I'm creating this reference library for anyone in the world to access Silicon Valley. He goes, so wait, what do you do then? I was like, oh, I'm an investment banker. And there was a pause. And then he just looks at me and goes, if I had known, I wouldn't have talked to you. And I was like, what? And then a moment later he goes, but I might have a deal for you. And we start talking about this thing he wanted to do. I was like, oh my God, this is hilarious. But that's so true. It is so true. People have a stigma, their inbox or whatever. But if you build a relationship with someone, it's different. And you can do that with a podcast.
Yeah, that's neat. I
Yeah.
have to laugh back in my journalism days. People would have the same reaction to me when I was like, I'm a journalist. They would be like, get away. And they'd like run away from me. Like, okay.
And then how'd you get there? Were you like, yeah, I do stuff on Etsy or I have a Pinterest to pay? Oh, let's talk.
It was really about getting them at the right time because it was M&A, right? So it
Mm,
was usually right after someone had closed a deal and they were high on life and willing to talk to me. And then you build up that relationship of trust. But yeah, a lot of them were very panicked,
yeah.
especially if I was chasing them down streets or elevators, has been known to happen. So
Turn the corner just at
yeah,
the right moment, accidentally bump into each other.
exactly, exactly. Or, I'd sit always the front row of conferences and like look at them intently. So they'd be primed to talk to me right afterwards because they were like, someone's listening. Um, but yeah. So given that, how did you decide to be, or what was your path to investment banking, right? It's an interesting I mean, because you didn't go, like, kind of the traditional path, the one that I think of as kind of like that escalator where you sort of get on, and then before you know it, that's where you are for life, but, like so how did you end up in A and VC, and why? Like, what about it draws you?
Yeah. I mean, to start off, one of the most common things that PE or anyone says to me, they go, "We looked you up online. So wait, you majored in mechanical engineering and you have a minor in theater? How does that work?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good story." And, yeah, so my background is definitely not typical. I mean, didn't go to an Ivy League school or, get the MBA or anything like that, but uh, yeah, from college to living overseas, I started a couple companies overseas, so I got, operating experience. Came back to the US after, exited my last company that I had built, got involved with an angel group in Silicon Valley. Went from volunteering to the investment director. It was the second oldest angel group, which was incredible because, you're in a room with these angel investors in Silicon Valley. Most of them had taken companies public or had exits or had this or that, just incredible careers. And so what's their job? Is to belittle everything that the investment director says to them and for them to tell you how wrong you are for how many reasons. And actually, this is before I became the investment director. This is like Sean full on volunteer, getting more and more engaged, doing write ups for all these different companies. And one of my favorite stories is there is a gentleman there who I became friends with later, but, at this time, I was like arch nemesis. I did this, two-page write-up on this wearable company, and, I presented it to them because they were reviewing the company. And then the next day, the gentleman comes up to me and goes, "Sean, that report you did, oh my gosh, it was incredible. We talked about it all last night at the bar." I was like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, we've never laughed so hard in our lives." I was like, "What?" He's like, and of course, they're all swearing, "You did this, you did," I was like, and I just took it as that's some incredible feedback. Oh my gosh. So I was looking at it as every time I got to meet this group, it was like an MBA course. It was just a lecture, and I was just learning from all these people that had such successful careers. And, did that for a number of years. But in that process, I started doing partnerships with, so we had Silicon Valley, 20 years, 30 years of relationships. At that time, this is before the trade wars. This was,
Mhm.
15 years ago at this point. Wow. Yeah. A long time ago. All this new money from China coming in, and I lived in China. I spoke Chinese. So let's do some partnerships. You got new money. We got deal flow. We got access. And then from that led me to work for a Chinese company for a number of years, and that was when I was helping companies from Silicon Valley set up in China and vice versa. But in this process, what you're doing is you're getting companies ready to present to investors. You're packaging them, you're helping them with their presentation, you're coaching them, all of this. And it just led into investment banking because I was also making introductions to investment banks. And I remember them telling me, "Hey, Shaw, thanks for the intro. We made a ton of money." And me going, "Wait, what? That's not how life's supposed to work. It's supposed to be, hey, we made money. Here's money." And you're like,
Right, right, here's your part of it,
"Here's
yeah.
yours." Like, "Hey, we know my watch is worth more than you made last year, but don't you want to look at my watch? Because it's not my only watch." And you're like, "Wait, what? Are you hurting my feelings even more with that? Like, your social skills are not there." And so, after I made one intro to one group, they were like, "Sean, we don't want you to make intros to anyone else anymore. We'll sponsor all your licenses. Come on board." And that was the first investment bank I was at. I was there for a little while. Then I switched over to another one, and then Silicon Valley High Point Capital after you know, s- over 6 years at the others, I was like, okay, it's time to branch off, do my own. So it was a natural progression if you look at it from wow, working with screening companies for angels for an angel group I was a part of to doing these cross-border deal flow agreements and getting them ready to go overseas and making introductions to investors and local governments and all that overseas to then here's intros to investment bankers and just being able to screen that deal flow filter, get them ready, prep them. I was looking back, I was like, wait, why wasn't I an investment banker? Like, instead I was just this biz dev person for a Chinese company. And before that, more or less a volunteer that was just passionate about it, helping these companies. So
But I'm curious too, because you started a bunch of companies, then you were involved in the cross border. So you really had that real world experience before going to a bank. And I'm like really curious then what your perception was of how investment banks often approach deals. Because
mm,
as someone who worked in corp dev, it's very common in the corp dev community, you get pitched by bankers and you're like, "Oh, they really know nothing about our industry.
uh,
Like, this is all so
well,
theoretical.
I
It's just, not even real."
yeah, I just don't think they even understand. This is gonna sound harsh, but most bankers don't understand the life of a founder or an operator. They're like, "Oh, well, how come these numbers, these margins and that?" But it's like, "Tell me about how things are doing. How's your mental state? How's your mental wellness? Are you still emotionally engaged in this company? Are you still excited about it? How's the team doing?" Like, tell me more in that emotion versus just the numbers on a page. And I don't think a lot of bankers can really relate to their clients. Like, they might know an industry,
Right.
they might know all the players in that industry, the companies, what the margins should be, the numbers, how to do valuation of that. But, until they've had to empty their bank accounts to make payroll because a client didn't end up paying them, I don't think they can relate to a lot of these founders. And, I remember one time when I was in China at the company at the end there, I want to go to Tibet. I still have not gone to Tibet. I was planning on going to Tibet. It was gonna be awesome. I had the money saved. It was great. One big account, and, off camera, I'll tell you the story of what happened, but we'll just sum it up as someone on the team did something inappropriate, and they decided not to pay, and
They
that
just
was a
decided not to pay? Like, how does that happen?
off camera, we can talk about it,
Okay.
and, so I had to empty my bank account to make payroll. That was it, and that's what you had to do. So I never went, still haven't. Um you know but as someone that's founder of a company, it's your responsibility to make sure that your staff's paid and the company grows and it moves forward, and you're going to have situations like that. I don't think many of my peers quite have ever experienced anything like that. Not only have most of them never, put everything on the line to build a company, most of them grew up in pretty nice environments. I mean, there are definitely those investment bankers out there. You hear them going from rags to riches, but it's definitely more common of their parents were in finance. They went to a great school. Their experience in the world was a semester abroad. Like, that's another thing that I think is hilarious. I mean, Silicon Valley, so many founders are international, and it's great sharing stories of just life living overseas in different countries. And I'll have conversations with investment bankers like, yeah, that reminds me of my semester abroad in Spain. And you're like, okay, how does let's
It's
see where this goes. Okay, tell me about your semester abroad in Spain. That totally relates to 8 years overseas and third world countries and everything. Yeah, let's go for this. And the other person possibly from third world country or wherever is just like, yeah. So
that
life experiences. I think actually that is one thing that separates me and actually my team. When people get to know the team at SVH Capital,
Mhm.
it's incredible. I mean, we have Bennett from Ghana. I mean, his story is incredible. Like, just, Holly, we have Jason, we have all these great people, and it's such a diverse background, and bringing that to deals is very powerful. But yeah, I
I
sorry to do the sales pitch there, but I just had to
No,
bring
no,
it
no,
up
no.
with
Yeah, I think it is. I was gonna mention my semester abroad my year abroad,
a year. That's
but,
different than a
uh
semester. Oh, sorry.
yeah, right, a whole year,
You had
no,
life
but I
experiences there.
yeah,
What was it like not
exactly.
paying rent because you had to work? Wait, it was all taken care of. No,
I've worked. I waited tables. No, but, with yeah, it is so true what you're saying, but I think the international angle is super interesting to me because my startup I went to was international, right? And so, I was in London all the time, in
nice.
Hong Kong, and I was running a team where it was really like 30%, 120 team, where there were 40 in APAC and 40, and you learn a lot, right, doing that. I'm not saying anything like living 8 years abroad, but what's interesting to me is I've just seen so many best people kind of sneer at when you're doing cross-border deals or going abroad, and the poor people in EMEA and APAC are always like, "Every market's different," and I've seen just so many US people be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, yeah, sure," and I'm like, "But it is," like,
Yeah.
I just feel bad for them, like,
Yeah.
you have to explain this to the Americans over and over again, and they still don't believe you,
Yeah.
so
Well, it's just crazy to think because I mean, one is, studying a little bit, but work in and live in another country. I don't think there's anything else out there that you can learn as much in such a short amount of time. So,
yeah.
anyone listening to this podcast, I highly recommend take the opportunity, live abroad for a little while, work abroad, date someone abroad, just do everything. Try to be like the local abroad, and you'll learn more that short amount of time, however long it is, than I think anything else you do in life.
So that's your advice question, because I know we're, like, slowing down, but this is so interesting to me to talk to you about this, but so when you decided, though, to go out on your own after the investment bank, what was that like? Like, why did you decide to go independent, and kind of what were the pros and cons? Like, what were you weighing? What were you thinking about? Or
Ooh, that's a great question. I met Finalis. I've known Fed for years before switching over, and I saw what was being built and just went, okay, this is the right time. There's such a great opportunity here to work with this group, and there's so much potential in the future. So, but when you go out on your own, there's so much doubt at the beginning. That was the thing that I was panicking about because I was thinking, okay, no one's gonna work with this one person shop. And it was hilarious because, once I finally did branch off my own, I started telling everyone, "Hey guys, just want to let you know I'm SVH Capital." And they're like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "What do you mean? What?" They're like, "We thought that the place I was at before, we thought that was your place." I was like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, I had multiple people just telling me, well, I just always assumed the other place was your investment
yeah.
bank because of the way I presented it, the way I talked about everything. People were shocked that it wasn't. And so then I started actually having confidence, like, oh man, okay. So this is my own thing. And people I was talking to before that I'd built relationships with over the years. Another thing I questioned, would any of them go with me to this new opportunity that I was trying to build? Or would they say, "Ah, Sean, actually, no, we're gonna go with somebody else out there or the bank you're at or somewhere." Every person was like, "Sean, we built a relationship with you. Where you go, we're gonna go, we're gonna follow. We want to work with you when the time is right." And that was the biggest thing because trust me, I was cold sweats at night. I was like, I'm gonna be broke for years, and I want to have a family coming up and all this. I was just sweating, but in reality, that was the biggest fear. And after just conversations, 2, 3 months after I decided, that went away. Like that was the biggest hurdle, I would say. And then it was small stuff after that. Oh, I got to get a website, got to get a name. The name itself, that was almost 2 weeks because I'm looking on GoDaddy, what's available. And then all of a sudden I have this realization, wait a second, I can just type in ChatGPT what I want and then ask for available domains. And did that, of course, this was a while back. I don't know how to write prompts at this time. And it would give me all these great names. I'd look up the name. I'd be like, oh, wow, this domain name is only for $50,000. Can I get a domain name that's $12? Can we find something? And then, I find all these great ones and then I submit them for now. Hey, these are the names I want. You can't have bank in the name. Oh, I didn't know that.
Really? I
Can't
didn't
have
know
bank
that
in the name.
either.
Yeah.
Wonder why. I get
You have to
so
be, was it that insurance FIDC insured or that to be a bank in
oh, yeah,
California? And
yeah.
there's all these rules in California. Can't have
Hmm.
bank in the name unless you're like, what people think is a bank. So there went a lot of the domains I'd found. And, I ended up finding Silicon Valley High Point Capital and svhcapital.com. I wanted something short. It took a while, but yeah, like I said, like 2 weeks to find the name. And then it was, how do I do branding? Okay. How do I do the website? And, now I could just type it in. AI would do it in 5 minutes, but at the time it was, all right, WordPress, let me work with you. Okay, drag this, drop that. Don't like how that looks. There was another week right there. So it was all these little things that were taken care of for me at the business card, or the one that annoyed me the most, the
Mm.
email footer. Oh my gosh. That I was like, this is gonna take 10 minutes. It was like 4 or 5 hours 'cause the picture and the word, that that alone, I was like, "Okay, I wasted half a day on this." I kept thinking, "Should I just get someone on Fiverr? They could do this for $5," but no, I've already spent a couple hours on it. I'm gonna get it. My wife ended up doing it for me, bless her heart.
I did so I went through a very similar journey like a year ago and, also on GoDaddy after spending a couple weeks paralyzed because there are so many options now. This is one of the challenges I think with AI, is I kept being like, "But there's this, and then there's that, and then there's this thing." And it just went around and around and to decision paralysis, and then I just went with GoDaddy as well.
It's all those little things at the beginning you don't even think about. You know,
Yeah.
business cards, website, footer, like what email provider you're using, Google or Microsoft. And you're like, oh, this is going to impact me forever. Yeah, it's like you're having all these little decisions that the first month or 2, and you just wanna do deals. You just wanna get your name out there and that, but at the same time, you're thinking, "I don't have an inbox set up yet. I need to get that done. I need to get" there's all those little things. So that was mentally, the biggest thing was, would anyone work with me? And then all the little action items that, hopefully in the future, there'll be, "Here are the 50 action items you need to go from 0 to your operational investment bank on the Finalis platform." Go, go, go.
And I know it's going, and that's so one question and the theme of this really is, like, closing a deal, right? Because that is, like, the biggest challenge most deal makers have, and I've seen the aggregated data for years now, and I always picture it. I think I've described it to you, even Sean, the other day, as kind of like the salmon, the journey of the salmon, that you see the PBS journey where it's like they come back to lay their eggs, but they almost all of them, like, die along the way, and they have to jump up a stream and, like, all of these things just to get to the end, and it's only a few of them ever make it at the end of this journey. I always feel like that's very similar to, like, the deal life cycle, right? Where it's like so many deals die along the way or restart. So I'm kinda curious on your end, what was your first deal close like? Like, what was that moment for you?
So the first deal close that I mean, really, it was me from start to end. And what I mean by start to end, no, like everything. This was a one person deal. I sold a company to DuckDuckGo. It was DuckDuckGo's first acquisition. The big unicorn company I'd represented, the founders of a company is Removably. It's been written up in TechCrunch and everything else. So it's, public information. It was incredible because, well, one, everyone involved were good people. It wasn't combative. Everyone was working. Everyone was such a great atmosphere. Everyone wanted the deal to happen. Afterwards, and this was during the pandemic. I wasn't even sure if I could do a deal because no one would meet in person. This was 100% virtual deal.
Wow.
100%. No one ever met in person. Not true. I did meet the other side, one of the partners at DuckDuckGo in person for coffee in Silicon Valley. But everything else was, and I think that was actually after the deal closed, now that I think about it. But yeah, my client, I've never met them in person. That was virtual, everything 100% virtual. So I was worried at the beginning, how do you do a deal virtual? Can a virtual deal even be done now? It's no big deal. But back then it was like, this is like, you're supposed to look them in the eye and shake their hands. And why would the client even sign engagement without meeting you face to face and building that relationship? I was freaking out. The deal happened, like I said, 100% virtual. Everyone wanted it, you know, to get done. The clients were very happy. The acquirer was very happy. And I was just sitting there going, I did I was the bank I was at from beginning to end. And I was just sitting there, and it's funny because it's during the pandemic, so my celebration was literally, "All right, I'll just, sit in front of my computer, watch a movie tonight." Like, I don't have anyone, I can't even meet anyone in person, there's no restaurants to go out to, like, there's nothing. Huh, I'll just congratulate myself and, I guess I can do deals now 100% virtual. Let's move this, let's keep going. And it was awesome too because that deal, like I said, it was written up in TechCrunch, it was written up, there's a good number of posts on these different tech platforms and that about the deal, and I was just shaking my head going, "Yeah, yeah, that was me. That was me."
That's no, but that's amazing 'cause it is a journey, right? So, it's not
Oh, it was totally a journey, and like I said, I didn't think you could do a deal 100% virtual. I really didn't at the time. Like, I was panicking the whole time, and people adapted. People got it done. And now, of course, it's like, how many times do I have to meet this person in person? Like, why can't we just do it all virtual? God, they want me.
I know. Well, I remember talking to people throughout the pandemic, and they were all going through this little crisis of like, we can't meet people, but it's so much faster and easier this way when we're not traveling all the time. So, what, like for you, like, what do you think the secret is to closing deals? Like, where do deals often go wrong, and like, how do you avoid those kind of pitfalls?
I think a lot of it I think a lot has to do with was a relationship established early on. And that relationship of does the client feel comfortable to ask you questions? And do you feel comfortable telling the client what they need to hear, not what they want to hear? Because if you have that relationship at the very beginning, you can set expectations before going out to market. You can set expectations for, time and valuation range, a lot of things. And also with that relationship, you understand kind of the mental wellness of your client and you're able to track that throughout the journey. And if you're paying very close attention to that, you could see, okay, there's days that this person's doing well, up and down. Okay, there's concerns here. What's going on? Is it the transaction or something happened with the business? I can ask questions and, checking in quite consistently throughout the transaction, not just, hey, we'll have this 2-week report for you or you know, Friday meeting for 15 minutes or whatever to give you a status update. It's, hey, let's have a quick 5-minute chat. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, here's a few emails. Here's a couple questions. I'm just checking in. Want to make sure and keeping those lines of communication open. And that's not only on your client side. Throughout the process, once you narrow it down and get into confirmatory due diligence with potential buyer or the investors having that relationship with that side of the table too. And
Yeah.
some people, they're either combative or they're not on top of things, or they think someone else will do it. And when things are silent or there's not that communication, people go, "What's going on? I'm having doubts. I'm having these thoughts. I'm having oh, these other shiny thing just appeared," or and things get derailed. And that famous saying of "time kills all deals" is so true. But if you're in the constant communication, things can move forward. You know what both sides are thinking. You know if there's concerns. You know if something's happening. So I mean, a lot of it is that communication component with all the parties involved. And if you're able to facilitate that, I mean, you're the probability of closing because you know in advance before sign the LOI with this party or that you've built
Right.
a relationship with them. You know what they're thinking. You've asked them the questions. How many of the last 10 deals you did, how many closed after the LOI was, at this stage, or did you do any retrades? Or you've asked questions and you've had dinner with them and you've built this relationship where it's like, okay, I know they want to get this done and it's a priority, and I know they're a good fit for your client, and you're just able to really assess the situation more in real time and do what's needed to keep progressing it versus the I don't really know what's going on. I'm guessing. I don't have this rapport relationship. I'm just drawing a blank on what's really happening. And then those things just, it's amazing when someone tells me a deal died and I just start talking to them and they're like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And you're like, really? You didn't know that? You didn't know, the person went on trip for 2 weeks and didn't contact you? You didn't think that was a warning sign? Or you didn't think, these documents were delayed? Or when the yeah, it's just weird. It's like, why didn't you know this? Why didn't you get that, you know, kind of feeling that something might be stirring?
It's interesting too because that emotional component of deal making is so critical to getting deals done. But you mentioned earlier and you raised a question that I think is really critical, I'd imagine, for successful bankers, which is not just like, being like, hooray, someone wants to do a deal, but doing due diligence and picking good clients and picking good buyers as well. So being comfortable maybe saying no. to people when they want to do a deal if they're not meeting those standards. So I'm wondering, does that sound right to you, or how do you pick it? How do you pick a good client or figure out if a client's the right fit for you, and whether the buyers are, tire kickers or whether
Yeah.
they're, worth that time and investment?
Great question. Knowing if it's a good client, there's a lot there. One is just, do they have realistic expectations of their business? You'll talk to people and they go, "Oh, I'm not gonna sell anything less than this number." And you go, "I guess you're never gonna sell." Okay. Well, glad we established that. But there are bankers out there that will go, "Well, I'll sign this engagement with this person." And when the market gives them feedback, they'll just automatically adjust to whatever the market tells them because they'll have that information. That's not necessarily true. People might have that line in the sand. That's it. So having that potential client or client that's coachable,
Mhm.
that's huge. One is, are they coachable? Are they actually looking at you as you're an expert in transactions? You're the investment banker I'm going to, or hey, I'm the smartest with everything. I've been this CEO for so long. I found this company and I went from zero to wherever I am. You might say some things, but really at the end of the day, I'm the smartest one in the room and that's it. I mean, that client, that is very challenging. But you want that client that goes, okay, I know what I don't know. I don't know transactions. Maybe I've been a part in some manner, but I really want that Sherpa, that guide that can get me to the top of the Himalayas
Right.
safely. And there's a lot of times where people don't make it to the top of the Himalayas, but you get the right guide, you prepare, you have a good plan and path, and the likelihood again there is a lot greater. So having that client that understands the journey, that timing, not the hey, it's November, I want to close by the end of this calendar year, but it's going to take me a year or two to get ready to have that exit that I want, and you can help guide me. Right. Okay, you want these documents? Yes, I can get them by Thursday, and they actually give them to you by Thursday. Or there's so many signs before an engagement is signed where this person's gonna be a great client, or, "Oh my gosh, this is gonna be painful." I mean, this is what another thing I'm always kinda curious is, at least for me, I want that client where I feel happy when they call me out of nowhere to ask a question. Not that client where it's like, this person's call, oh gosh, I just don't want to talk to them. Oh, it's every time that their number pops up on my phone, it's painful for the next half hour, an hour. I wanted where you're joking around, you're having fun, but you're getting business done. And so in my mind, those are good clients. And then on the other side of the table, the good buyers or investors, very similar. There's a lot of good people in this world, in this industry. There's a few that aren't so great, but are those people the right ones to work with your client moving forward for that transition or to take over their baby or to invest in them? And ideally, you've built a relationship with your clients, so you kind of know in advance when you have a call with them, who's a good fit for them? Who are they going to gel with? And that's a major part of these transactions. Yeah, we have these 4 LOIs. Of those 4, here are the numbers on paper, but here's how the conversations have gone. And based on that and your personality and what your goals are on that, maybe you look at this one a little bit more than these 3. Just, bringing that up. And that advice is super valuable. But yeah, getting to know the parties involved and really thinking about them, that's when you get a win on both sides, and I think that's a huge value that some investment bankers bring, but a lot more could.
Because I imagine it has to be so tempting, right? Because you think, "There's this pot of money, I'm just gonna take this deal," but then you can spend years chasing something that never comes to fruition, so I feel like that must require a lot of, like, self-discipline in a way, because I know I would be like, "Yeah, I'll do anything for that pot of money at the end," you know? It's very tempting.
Well, hopefully you have a big enough pipeline that you
Yeah.
get to pick the deals, right? I mean, same thing as the client as yourself. When you have all these options in front of you, you can
Mhm.
be more selective. You can be, sometimes it is a little bit challenging to wait, but if you think about it, you only have so much bandwidth. There's only so many hours in the day. So if you're working on these projects, how are you going to work on these others? And, if you have that good pipeline, if you have a podcast out there where everyone is seeing you and going, oh my gosh, this person, I know I can trust them. They must really be in Silicon Valley and have this huge network because of their guests. Huh. I should work with them. As long as you have that, good times.
So no, I'm just laughing because I feel like marketing is clearly something you're really good at. And as, the head of marketing at Finalis, there are a lot of things I want to be doing for people that for me, I'm like, send me your deals. We want to amplify your deals. We
Yeah.
want to do all these things. Not everyone is a fan of that. I'm discovering to my shock.
A lot of investment bankers, it's hilarious. They almost look at it as I almost want to say a negative thing. Like especially the ones that went to top MBA programs and that they're like, whoa, I'm above social media. And you're like, really? You're above doing deals and making money? It sounds like, and I think there's a component to people that have been in the industry a long time of that fear of opening up their own shop. And I think one of the biggest fears is they're used to having a biz dev team, a sales team, a marketing team where the deals come to them, whereas
Right.
it is challenging to bring deals, to market yourself, to be that person out there in public to build trust with potential clients. That's a challenge. And it is one thing that a lot of bankers have to get over and attempt if they want to be successful on their own or at a small shop or that. But it is fun. It's fun being on podcasts, it's fun being on stage, it's fun moderating panels, it's fun. I really enjoy it. At first, I was scared. I was so scared to be a moderator or on a
What?
panel. Yeah, actually, the podcast itself, I was so terrified. You wanna hear a funny story? I know we're over time, but, the first interview I ever did is with Melanie Perkins, uh, founder of Canva, alright?
So you started small.
I know, right? First interview. And, the thing with that was we wanted 45 minutes so we could have every 15 minutes a question or an advertisement set. And, I worked with the chief marketing officer to create the question set in advance and it got approved. And the problem was I thought we had a question set for 45 minutes. No, we had a question set for about 22 minutes after because Melanie's answers were like, "Poop, poop, 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 poop." I was like,
Oh,
oh no.
those are the worst. You're always like, "Wait, you're answering too quickly and too to the point."
True to the point. These are great sound bites, but
Yeah.
I need 45 minutes. And it was funny because at the end, I was like, Melanie, this is fantastic, but I really need 45 minutes of content. And we've already gone through all the questions. And so me, her, and our marketer, just like this on a Zoom call, we're brainstorming. Oh, we could talk about this. I'm like, is that okay? She's like, yeah. And it was the friendliest ever. And I was thinking, I was like, I'm brainstorming a question set with one of the most powerful, successful women in the planet. This is crazy. And I was like, just sweating bullets of just, because I was thinking I was unprepared. I wasn't professional, but yet it was just oh, sure, let's brainstorm. Let's have this casual we'll make this happen. And, then after I think it was probably the 15th episode or so of the podcast, I really felt comfortable of
Mhm.
just having conversations with people. And yeah, I had the public access TV show before that, but those were my friends. Those were people I'd known where it was just a casual conversation that I'd already talked to so many times about this or that. Whereas the podcast, it was kind of that elite level of guests where I was just, how do I even have the right to ask these people questions? They've been so successful. And now it's like, hey buddy, what's up? You're a person too.
Like, do you have a favorite question that you ask them? Or, like, how do you get them off that talk track, right?
So now before any podcast, I always have a prep session. So we'll do a 30-minute prep session. And the one question I always ask them, okay, you've been interviewed by so many other people over the years. What's one question or topic that you've always wanted someone to ask you? Because I'd like to cover that because I don't want people to be able to just search archives and get the same answers that we talk about. I would like all fresh, all new content that you've always wanted to talk about. And they sit there and go, oh, that's a good question. Huh. And then that's when it starts brainstorming up, we could talk about this and then maybe this. I'm like, that is great. And I start taking notes. And by the time the interview happens, they're ready to go. It's just they'll come up with stuff that as the interview you'd never have asked, you wouldn't know to ask, but they've wanted to share that story, and then that's people love stories, they love action items, that's the best content, and you just let them talk, and then, that feeds into to other things, and next thing you know, 45 minutes, an hour goes by, and you're like, "Oh my gosh," like, I'm gonna be thinking about this interview for the next week when I'm walking or driving the car, or, "That was an incredible story, thank you for sharing it." So that's my favorite question. What have you always wanted to talk about, but you've never had the opportunity or no one's ever asked you?
So, Sean, what have you always wanted to talk about and you've never had the
Me?
opportunity? Yeah, you. Let's do it.
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking what's next for Silicon Valley High Point Capital. That's the big thing I've been thinking of lately is just how I want to see this group grow in the coming years. And the issue or one of the thoughts I have is how are we going to grow this with AI, complement everyone? How is AI going to impact us also as we grow? Because right now in the investment banking world, I look at AI as, oh my gosh, it is such a useful tool to help with so many things. But I also kind of see in the future, okay, when does it get to the point where a potential client goes, well, I just am going to use Claude or something else to do all the matchmaking, the data, or maybe it's just AI talking to AI and them coming up with all the terms of a transaction and just a lawyer, someone looking over it, and there's almost no humans in that loop. And how far away are we from that? And, you know, is with the timeline, should I be building out a team and train everyone, or should I be thinking more, okay, how do I use AI agents and build the workflow or complement the two? I mean, for me, I think it's a very interesting time. I think there's a ton of opportunity for small shops to grab business from the bigger, more established groups out there because many of them aren't as nimble. Many of them are set in their ways of, we've always done deals this way the last 30 years. We're not changing. And you're thinking, well, thank you, because we're going to get your clients. They're going to hear about the Closer podcast and how they're gonna push this out there and maybe edit with AI or just get the content out there and all this other great stuff while you're sitting there too worried or too much of an ego to promote yourself. And with AI, you can create so much content so quickly these days. But yeah, just thinking of what the next 5 years look like for SVH Capital.
And it's such a existential but tough question, right? That I feel like we all have to be asking ourselves because you see all the reports like there won't be any bankers or lawyers in 5 years. What is the future for us? I was running into someone the other day. I'm like, what are my kids going to do? Like, is it worth even going to college anymore? But then I don't know about you, but I often feel like I'm in a bubble because I talk to people who are very focused on AI and I've been focused on AI. And then I go outside the world. And everyone's like, why are you having daily panic attacks about
Yeah.
this? This isn't happening. I'm like, no, it's happening. It's happening. It's real.
It
So.
was the other day I was at, ACG, Association of Corporate Growth. It's a organization focused on the mid-market. I think many of our listeners are probably familiar with them, and the event was, the yearly 5 tech trends,
Mhm.
and, this is Silicon Valley where this one was held. So they had a panel for the 5 speakers. Each speaker had their own tech trend. The 5th speaker was a robot, an AI robot, where it was just, waist up on a chair, and it was scary, but at the same time, they asked it questions, it responded. And one of the questions was, when are we gonna see robots in everyone's home? And the answer was, in Silicon Valley in 3 to 5 years, in the rest of the US in 30 years. And you're like, "Whoa, okay, that was very insightful." But, I mean, here we have driverless cars, Waymo, all that, and it's been happening for years. You go anyplace else, they're like, "What?" Yeah, the Jetsons?
Uh, but it's even amazing to just hear that, Sean, because I'll tell you, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I went to an ACG and I was on a AI panel in San Diego or something. We were talking about some of the trends, and definitely it was not a robot on the panel with us at that time. It was a lot more like, "Hey, well, like, things sync from my Google, cloud up
Mm,
into,
yeah.
kind of basic
Oh,
stuff.
one of the biggest I don't wanna say arguments, but at least kinda conversations me and my wife had for years was, should she get her driver's license? So she moved here from another country, uh,
Mhm.
back in 2016, 2017, and I just kept saying, "Why? There's gonna be driverless cars by the time you learn to drive." And, 2018, 2019, 2020, I'm sitting there, I'm like, "I was promised driverless car," like, we had we see all these cars with LiDAR on the roof, like, why don't we have friends that are test driving these cars, like, that's their job, and they're telling us, "Oh, yeah, today we got it so it stops at stop signs, yeah," and we're like, "That's the update?" And we're like, "Oh, it was tough before." You just kept hearing all these things, and now we're 7, 8 years later, like, still no driverless cars. I mean, there's a few, but it's not like so she did get her driver's license, if that's the question the audience is gonna ask.
She did.
Eventually, she did, but I was so adamant of just, "Why? We're gonna all have driverless cars by the time you learn to drive." I'm sure it's probably another 5, 10 years before it's more common. Like, pace outside of Silicon Valley is not even Silicon Valley, like, it gets super hyped, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, this is reality." And then you go anyplace else, it's like they never even heard what we talked about.
Yeah, it's like up and down and up and down, and you're like, "Wow." But I'm curious then with AI, right? I mean, there's so much that's a whole other conversation, but, like, what do you use it for practically in your
Oh,
deal making?
everything. Everything we're using AI to bounce ideas off of from, creating the sim. This is one of the things I love is just going typing in the description of the picture you want right there. Instead of before, okay, designer, this is what I want. And you send it back 3 iterations. Now it's this is what I want. It gets it like 90%. You just go, designer, I want this picture tweaked this way. Saves so much time. The wording, oh my gosh, how do I word this? Oh, or, I'm having trouble, finding this one bit of information that I know is in the data room. Type it in. Find me, this answers right there. One thing I've been doing, remember, I have all the pro accounts, so my disclaimer, all pro accounts, so
Yes,
information's
it's
not
all
being leaked,
good. Yes.
but I'm loving uploading stuff to Google Notebook and just creating a podcast on the deal that I'm working on and going over all the details on a walk. Like that, even if it's not a deal I'm working, just I had a say I had a conversation with a potential client.
Mhm.
Alright, let me just feed in a ton of information to Google Notebook or Notebook LM, and before my next call with them, have a 45-minute podcast, listen to it on 1.5 or 2x speed, and then just understand the newest things that are happening in the market, that sector, competition, their company, all that stuff, before the next call. Like I love it. It saves so much time. It's so useful that way to review things. And it's powerful. It's powerful the way that it sums it up and it's entertaining and it's great. And then, you could also use Notebook LM to create teasers and quizzes on the deals. Like you can quiz yourself on deals. How crazy is that?
Well, that's fun. Or your team, right? Can you
Or you're
imagine managing directors having a new wedge for the poor associates? Quiz
exactly.
time, 2 a.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here are 5 questions on the deal, answer
Yeah.
them. And, but yeah, then, so everything with the market materials,
Mhm.
AI is helping with that. Everything with even putting the data room together, you can just use Claude, put everything in and have it parceled out. Put these documents in the folders that they should go into and label. Check for signatures, check all this stuff. How do I reword this email for the client that I want to respond to? What are my action items? I just love asking a question. Okay, here's the potential buyers list. You know, based on this and this other information, what other questions should I ask myself as an investment banker to expand this potential list? Here are 10 questions you should ask. All right, let me take these 10 questions and now start feeding it back to AI. What companies would this is next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I just came up with 20% more potential buyers for this deal that I had no idea and neither did the research team. Huh. And I mean, the list goes on all the use cases right now for AI. If if you're open to using it. So, I mean, you got the deals itself, you got the marketing for
Yeah.
your company, you have, training team if they have any exams. Going back to, all right, create a podcast to help study for the 79, create a quiz for it to help you study. Here's a, here's all this stuff with AI. It's incredible.
So how though how do you make sure people really digest everything? Because that's something I've been struggling a lot with, the sort of digestibility question. When you can spin up, a research report in 2 minutes, how do you make sure people read and think through it?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like we're living in this world where people are just, like, clicking research reports at each other, and no one's actually reading or thinking about the actual content.
I mean, a lot of people never thought of things to begin with, let's be let's be honest. So, but maybe that's gonna be the thing that separates people in the future. I mean, we're bombarded with content nonstop. So how
Yeah.
do you really allocate your time? How do you really digest things? Like, the other day I was thinking about I haven't had a song stuck in my head in so long. But I guess the whole thing is just, yeah, it's your responsibility, and that could be a differentiator of, does this person actually really understand? Did they actually read, or did they just get 5 bullet points and think they can say that and that they understand? But time will tell.
I know. Alright, and we've gone a little far afield, but we've covered so much ground, but it seems like if I were to sort of summarize in a way what you're saying on the deal side too, you close deals because you know your client and you know the buyer, and it's really about the relationship, other
Yeah,
thing.
if people are talking, something will and deals will get accomplished. I think that's one area that people that are new in the industry, I don't wanna say, it's kind of a secret of that, but if people are talking and people wanna get something done, eventually it'll get done. It's when communication stops or hindered or emotion get in a negative direction that things start to get derailed. And then, I mean, this also goes back to that famous saying, "Time kills all deals." Why did time kill a deal? Was there new information? Did someone get distracted? Did someone have time to say something? Or, what was going on? But if there's open lines of communication, even when deals get derailed, and they always do, everything dies 2 or 3 times, they say, you're able to bring them back. You're able to find out why, what's going on, and you're able to, through that, get things past the finish line.
And that's last story from you, but tell me a time you resuscitated a deal, it was dying, something was off, and you managed to get it back on. What happened and what did you do?
Well, that's every deal. Every deal. Every deal dies multiple times, but I mean, some of it is just sitting down, having conversations with your client and just going, "Hey, what's really going on?" And you might hear that, "Oh, it's something with the family or this stress or that," or, they're worried to tell you because a client that was a significant portion of the sales didn't renew, or maybe hypothetically, there is a war that breaks out and their engineers overseas are missing and are
Oh.
they're having trouble finding them, and we need them to sign certain documents, and things are on pause because of that, and everyone is stressing for their safety. But luckily, a few months later, they're all found, and the deal can continue. But you have to have those type of conversations in those hypothetical situations, and, if you've built relationships, you're able to say, "Okay, let's just take this day by day. Let's calm down. Let's, what are the options here? Best case, worst case, what can we do? How do we tell the potential buyer the situation? Will they understand? How do we paint it in a picture that they will understand?" Deals can die for countless reasons, but they can also be revived for countless reasons. Or if you're just having communication with them and you've built a relationship, I mean, one thing is that person that you've had some good conversations with telling you something. Another
Mhm.
thing is that person you've only had an email or 2 with telling you something completely different. I mean, I think that's part of the banker's role, to build the relationships, to be able to communicate to both sides.
And be patient through crazy hypotheticals like
Yeah,
that.
right,
Sounds
right.
like, um, that is a wild one.
There's so many in this industry.
I know, and no one and they never see the light of day, right? Even though
Uh,
you want to hear them, like, you can't talk about it, so, like,
but good stuff.
it's been really interesting to learn more about you and your background and how you kind of approach deals because I think it's so important in today's day and age. And it's also, like you said, with AI, I feel like things are changing in a way where that relationship focus is going to be even more important because it's no longer about knowing the industry or the buyers inside and out, right? As you said, you can do that with AI.
No, but it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor to be on this podcast. And Abby, please, I'm always open and would appreciate being welcome back in a future episode. So please consider that. And with that, I mean, hopefully your audience got a couple of tidbits from this conversation.